All righty. Welcome in, everybody. I am so glad you are here. This is HR Lunch Bunch, and I am Deborah Jeffries, and this is hosted to you by HR Answers. We come to you live and, well, not so in person, but we are definitely live, and I am here with a host of people. So if you are listening later, kind of on demand, well, I'm glad that you made that too. So it's July, and I don't know if anybody's probably getting ready for the big 4th of July celebration. A couple of us were chatting beforehand. So if you have plans, enjoy, and please be safe. And if you don't have plans and you're just going to relax and take it easy, well, you deserve it and then some. I am sure that that is true. Today, we are talking a little bit about what I'm calling the hiring manager. Because for some of you, you involve the hiring manager, or maybe better yet, you drag them along to the process. I don't know, maybe some of both. Um, but I think sometimes when I get the opportunity to work with hiring managers, sometimes they don't want to be part of the process, they don't want to own the process. So I think that this can be a big oops in terms of getting our very best people in the door. So, thought we would talk about that today. And if you are new to HR Lunch Bunch, we meet the first Wednesday of every month, unless it really falls on a true holiday. And we meet from noon to 1. And this is intended to be a conversation. I tend to facilitate, but I will tell you, I have a couple of guests coming up, and I will let you know who they are at the end of our time today. And the people who come, I've got the chat box open. You can use that for discussion purposes, ask other questions, network with each other, even have personal conversations with people behind the scenes, and I will never know. You can also pose questions to me or other people and share your experiences, like what's working, what's not working. Do you have policies and procedures around things? So, this is an opportunity for us to network with each other around a particular topic. You can also suggest topics for the future for me as well. So again, if you've not met me before, again, my name is Deborah Jeffries. I work here at HR Answers. HR Lunch Bunch has been around for, I think it's been 20 plus years, getting close to that. And this is just to me, I think this is a fun opportunity to learn and share with each other. So um, I always ask if cameras can be on so we can chat with each other, but it's not the expectation that you have to have those. Again, chat box is up there for you to use. Sometimes I'll have poll questions. I don't have any today. And I am recording the session for people for later. And or if you want to come back or you thought this was a good conversation for others in your department or part of your organization, we will send out a link, follow-up email. I'll send you the slides. We'll send you a link to our YouTube page so that you can go back and capture this if you'd like to. It's completely up to you. So, and network some more. So, hiring manager. Why does it matter so much? Because, like, they help shape employees. They're part of your culture. They're part of the future leadership. They're all about retention and engagement. And my personal 2 cents, retention and engagement start in the interviewing process. We can start setting the stage for expectations in the workplace, start spelling out culture and what it looks like around here, and how how does the beginning of the training activities begin? It can all start in the interview process to get a feel for how do we do things around here. So, with that said, putting together just a little bit here of like, can we be honest about how things are going from a hiring standpoint? If you're hiring, how many of you have open positions right now, or you're trying to bring people in? Because for some organizations, the opposite is happening right now. So, have you got some open positions? Are you doing some interviewing? Okay, I see a couple emojis flying by, right? So, what's the reality of our hiring manager? What are they thinking? What's going on for them right now? Are they actively involved? Do they like this process? Do they like meeting new people? Do you know how many people I've asked? They don't even like interviewing. They don't like meeting new people. They don't like talking to people. Well, that's a problem, let alone our job descriptions and expectations. And are they current? Are they thinking about expectations for performance and behavior? Are they doing that onboarding piece beyond what HR or the organization is doing? And how's that role of hiring for success kind of changing and morphing? So, well, maybe I did put a poll in here. Sometimes when you prep in advance. All right. So, when hiring decisions go wrong in your organizations, what's the biggest reason? What's the most often reason? And I don't think I'd turn this into a poll. This is just like raise your hand, put something in the chat, unmute yourself. Is it like the wrong skills? Is it a poor cultural alignment connection? Unclear expectations? Not good onboarding? Maybe it wasn't a good read on the person in terms of their attitude or approach. What do you guys think? Or maybe just not sure. We didn't get a good read on it. They walked out the door before lunch and we don't know. So I've got a week training as an answer, rush to hire, okay? Another making a decision too quickly. And so for you two, I would be interested in what's our process or what happened? How did we get to too quickly? Got unclear expectations, weak onboarding, got a couple of votes. Um, oh, you know, Ruben, yes, the person who showed up to that interview, like maybe like all in, lots of energy, good ideas, positive vibes, uh, strong answers, whatnot. And then the person who showed up, that is not the person who was in the interview. Like there's a disconnected. My words, completely my words. Jekyll and Hyde. And it's like, well, what? That's not what we saw. That's not what we heard. So, okay. So based on those answers, though, you know, some of those things are things we can do something about. Are you doing something about them? Are these things surprises? Are managers talking about these things? Are you the only person in the department? You and your department are talking about these things? How many whoopses in the hiring have we had? What does that look like? Talk to me. Talk to each other. I mean, unmute yourself and let's let's
For us,
share.
I would say when the applicant hasn't been completely honest in one way or another, whether it's medical history, uh, work references, something like that.
Okay. Okay. So, and do you suppose the honesty is a fear of if I share, then I wouldn't get
Absolutely.
hired? Okay.
Yeah. And they've even said that to me. So,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, especially around the medical questionnaire. So then we get into the ethical and honesty conversation.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. And and it's important, Lisa, why don't you tell people where you work so they understand why you would even be asking some of those questions in the first place?
Yeah, so we are partnerships in community living, and we support adults and children with developmental disabilities. So there are physical requirements. So we just have them do a confidential post-offer questionnaire. No physical exam or anything, just a questionnaire after employment. So is offered.
Okay. And Stacy, you also commented on keeping the momentum in training. Is this like the onboarding education of training, getting them up to speed and familiar with programs or services or how we do things around here? And making sure we're not losing that. Oh, like training out in the field, quote unquote. Okay. Talk to me about those of you who talked about the onboarding stuff in terms of being weak onboarding. Is that because it's going because you don't have a process, a program, because people don't know who's doing what, um, because we're rushing the process? What's going on there? Because obviously there was I think three or four responses to that.
I'll just mention it. So I am actually a hiring manager and I work for a financial institution that has 14 different branches. And so as a hiring manager, a lot of that onboarding, we partner with HR for a lot of parts of that. But some of it is left up to us. And so the way I onboard may not be the way that 13 other managers are onboarding. So the nice thing about where I work is there's a lot of autonomy, which is great. But when you have 13 different people doing things, 14 different people, excuse me, doing things the way that they want to, sometimes there can be some crossed wires, or just some miscommunication. So for me in my industry of what I do, that's kind of what I was referring to.
Yep. And that makes perfect sense in so many ways. And on one hand, your branch can have some things that make it unique. If this branch does loans, but maybe some of the other branches don't, right? Or certain kinds of things that then, yes, we would be doing training on that, but others wouldn't. So what makes us unique or different? Great. However, there's also the opportunity for, I'm guessing, there's the opportunity from people maybe to move from one location to another location based on maybe cross training, coverage needs, but also advancement opportunities or something along those kinds of things. So then based on that, what would that look like or how do we? And oftentimes when I've had the chance to work with multiple supervisors, it's, you know, get you also several of you also talked about expectations. Getting on the same page about who does what on the onboarding, right? So HR covers XYZ kinds of things, and then we release people to the supervisors, managers, and are covering what? Where do you pick up where they left off? Because HR doesn't onboard to your department, right? Or to your location. So what are the things that belong to you? And in some respects also breaking that up a little bit to what needs to be in the first week, the first month versus the second or the third month, because you can only absorb so much information at one time. And that consistency, how important that is for all you hiring managers, right? And same thing then with expectations is you might not have the same expectations for all of your employees because you've got some that have been there a long time and they might be kind of some different at different levels, but that we should probably have a good like solid 10 or something that's consistent among all of our managers across all 14 locations. And then you might have some additional because your location is your location or you and as a manager you have some things that but they all fall under or within the big umbrella of the operation. Because then again, if I go from your branch to another branch, it would be because otherwise it's like I went to a whole new employer. That might not be good for the culture of the organization. So yeah, I think and in some respects, HR doesn't have to be the person who puts these things together. Managers can come together and say, "Hey, we've been thinking, we've noticed, I mean, there's power in numbers, right?" So many of the things that you guys are bringing up are things that are definitely quote unquote within our control or within our ability to influence, I think, in some fashion. So I'm reading something else in the chat here that's a little bit lengthy. Um, the interview isn't a good way to judge a worker. Sometimes I think the interview isn't a good way to judge a worker. There's so much pressure for the applicant to be on that you don't get a sense of who they really are. And in some respects, the stress of having to do a good job and how long is the interview anyway and do you even know how many people you're quote up against and what kind of interview is this? So think about that. Do you do panel interviews? Is it a one-on-one, two-on-one? Is it a sequential where there's multiple interviews in a row? So think about all of that, let alone to the point that continues as an introvert. I know that I felt that I have to present a certain type of person, like myself, to be a certain type of person in that interview, which doesn't necessarily reflect how I'll show up at work, right? And so, and keep in mind that one of the things is that remember that introvert and extrovert. Introvert really means is here's where I get my energy from, which means tend to I tend to want to get my energy by quiet, usually by myself, go someplace else, where expressive extrovert people really get their energy from other people. So they can be like around people all day and then go out at night and want to be still around more people. Well, an introvert can still be very expressive during the day, but then I need my downtime to recharge, kind of like plugging in those electric cars, right? The answer is back to the battery. And so how you do that. But then if we're talking about a sense of belonging and connection, authenticity, psychological safety, don't you want the real person to be in the interview because that's who's going to show up every day? How are we providing that as an opportunity? And don't you want a bunch of diverse people on your in your workplace? Because if I hire a bunch of the same people over and over again, I got I got mega skills in one area, or I got mega personality in one area, but I got big old gaps and holes over here if we're well, right? So how we sometimes set up the interview. I'm making a phone. Do we all operate on a phone these days? Um, I talk to my computer. Um, how are we setting up for the interview for success? Is the interview virtual? Is it in person? How does that how does that what's the applicant experience? Is it easy to navigate? Is it comfortable? Right? What would be your rating? You know, 1 to 5 stars, right? One to 10. What would the applicant say is their applicant experience that later turns into an employee experience, right? Um, and there you go, Heather, right? Introvert also is how you process information. And that would also suggest how many of you, and I don't think I put this question anywhere in here, is do you give interview questions ahead of time for people to be able to review? Do you give some of the questions? Do you put the questions in writing for applicants when they are interviewing with you? So to aid our neurodiverse applicants. And so regardless of the who, sometimes that just makes it a less stressful interview, unless your goal is a stress interview, because that's the nature of the position. And that's something that you're trying to assess. And you're doing that intentionally, right? So, and I like that, Shauna, right? In-person interviews, try and schedule the interview location where they'll be working and a tour of the facility. I'm always about a tour of the facility, even if it's just an office environment so that they know what it is. And it wasn't just the lobby or just the conference room where the interview was, because sometimes people don't like if this is where they would be working and it's like in the back area or it's cube land. They thought they were going to get an office, or they thought it would be bigger, or they thought it would be more people or less people or something. I mean, one time, this is a long time ago, you guys, but one time I interviewed somebody and she goes, do you have something that's a little bit more like remote? Like maybe even a closet or something. I was like, pardon? And she goes, I just really, I just don't need a lot of space. And really, I really just, I don't need to have people around. I don't need to talk to people. And I said, you did see the part about answering the phones and greeting people that come in. Now, we didn't have a lot of traffic in the early days of HR Answers. However, she really wanted to be in the closet. We had a supply closet. She goes, like space like that, that would be perfect for me in terms of an office. I'm like, that's the supply closet? She goes, that'd be perfect. And I was like, um, that's not really HR answer style. We actually ended up hiring her. She was employee number one working with Judy. Judy loved her to death. She was one of the best word processors ever. I mean, they got along great, but oh boy, that was just like, what? So I'm just telling you, and I hear you, Shauna, mixed feelings about providing those questions in writing in advance. But sometimes, even if you give them like one or two, and it doesn't have to be like days in advance, maybe even 24 hours. And part of this also, think about it from this perspective, is that you're given a little bit of a glimpse of what they can expect. Two, you're also keeping them connected to you. So think about this. When did you offer the opportunity to come in? And think about how many other people are extending an offer for them for interviewing or over the phone or whatnot. You're still trying to keep them connected to you. And even if you offer them the job, how long before they can actually start? What are we doing to keep people connected to us? Because how many of us have lost people because they went to somebody else in the interim or got a job offer? So this whole hiring process, how do we keep them connected to us even they haven't started yet? Right? And if we can give them one or two questions to kind of be thinking about. So if it's the night before, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow at 10, thought I'd give you two of our questions for you to ponder between now and then. And this is like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? But it's not all 10 of your questions or whatever, right? So just think about what it can do for you, because are we trying to create a, I don't have any thoughts about that and I have to think about everything off the top of my head? Or is it, I'm so glad you sent that to me in advance because it gave me a chance to reflect on my previous employers and how, what a variety of situations I've been in, and giving you the best example or one of the most challenging because that's what you wanted. And wow, I really have had a mixed bag over the years. So it just kind of depends on what do we, what do you want out of that interview? So when you think about these oopses, what surprises you? Because if it surprises you, that means we haven't prepared for it, or we think we've done a really good job on all of these things, and that shouldn't be happening, right? Or the manager is like, "What is going on? This is weird," as opposed to, "Yeah, we've been having challenge with that for the last couple of years, or this last year, or whatever." So when we think about the numbers that are out there, um, you might tell me whether or not, again, back to our polling kinds of things, 74% say hired the wrong person. That's a good portion of us have hired the wrong person. 46% failed within the first 18 months. How would that measure up to your data? 89% said hired for attitude, not for skills. Now, most of us, we got to have skills to get in the door. But let's face it, I mean, I do a lot of training around this. Skills get you in the door, but skills doesn't necessarily get you promoted. It's all those other business necessity kinds of things like problem solving, conflict resolution, able to communicate with each other, right? Do you have empathy? Can you provide grace? What's your interpersonal ability to connect with other people and communicate with them, right? So they're not, and I should have, and shame on me. I A couple of times in here I have the word fit, and I'm going to recommend to all of you, get rid of the word fit in any kind of size, shape, or form. It should be about cultural alignment. It should be about the employees in alignment with your mission, your vision, your core values. The answers to your questions should be in alignment with the supervisor, with what you're looking for. So use the word alignment, right? Fit still gives us a little bit of fits and starts, especially with our attorneys, and making sure they're not discriminatory in any way. So go for alignment. Alignment's a much better word. Okay. Um, so when we think about hiring, right, think about what's really going on or what isn't going on, right? Um, think about your last hire and, obviously no names. Um, what made it successful or unsuccessful? And this is a real life question to all of you. If you think about it or you've talked with a manager or supervisor, um, what what kind of, things might stick out? And then we can kind of, see if there were any themes here, debrief that, but then we can maybe go back to that training question too. So is there something that you think made it more successful, or what made it kind of not so much? Or even when you think about those 14 locations, and maybe I don't know, Courtney, if whether or not you guys debrief about any of those things at your locations, but is there something there that might also be emerging?
I think for us, we're given parameters, of things that we can ask and things we can talk about and things that we're not allowed to talk about by law. So we're given parameters and maybe some, like sample questions, but again, it's kind of up to each and every one of us how we approach that process. There's not really a lot
Mm,
of teaching us how to interact with this person to really drill down to what we're trying to find out about them to see if they're going to be in alignment with our culture as a financial institution, but also the culture of each branch. Every branch is different. So I see a real opportunity for us um, to have some more training opportunities on how to do an interview, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and I I'll hold my thought. I'll hold my thought. Other people weigh in. What what's made it successful or not successful in that new hire? You actually hired them. And I saw the note about um, that element, Deborah, about you know, our youngest generation. Um, well, actually, it might not even be youngest generation because our alphas are our youngest. Then we have the Zs before that. And your comment is the millennials, which millennials really are like, depending on the age breakout, they could be around 40 now. So, but that if we've got a position that might be a bit of a revolving door and staying 1 to 3 years, one of the things to be thoughtful of is, and I was just talking to someone yesterday about this, is then do we take this as this is a training ground? This is a training position, and we're doing the very best that we can because they're going to go out into the rest of the world, and then they will always remember where they got their training from. Do we train them because there's opportunities to move up within the organization? Because we know people don't stay in this position very long. So do we switch our mindset because we know that this is a position people don't stick around? So thinking about that a little bit. So saw the room to advance, right? And let's be honest, think about that in the hiring process. Are you a flat organization? Is there lots of room and opportunity? Right? If you came to work for us, you either own the business, you're a consultant, maybe an admin person. I mean, it pretty flat, right? So if you want to move up, you better have some serious money because then you're going to offer money to Lori to take over the business because there's not you don't go from admin to consultant. You have to have years of experience in HR to advance. So it is pretty flat, right? So be thinking about what is true in your organizations, or are, have you guys been putting together what's the 3 year, 5 year, 10 year? And some people are like, who can plan 10 years? Okay, I get it. But are we thinking strategically? Are we putting any work plans together for people? Do we have some retirements coming up? What does that look like that might afford anybody the opportunity to explore that? Setting expectations on both sides, right? Transparent. And when we have, it's not just the interview questions we have for them, what questions do they have of us? Absolutely. Okay. So those employees are there in their 30s. Okay, good. Um, Manager didn't check in often enough. Okay. they weren't doing what they really should be doing. So there's an element of trust and verify. And part of being a manager or supervisor, that is the job, holding people accountable to the work, right? To the quality, to the actual body of work. And 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 the answer is if they aren't doing it. And if I might be so bold, is it possible that the employee actually thinks they are doing the work? No one's come along and told them that they weren't, or that they weren't doing some portions of it because they aren't doing one-on-one check-in meetings of some sort or another, right? Depending on if they're working remote or if even if they're working side by side or in the same location, that some sometimes with some of the work that I get to do with supervisors, they have told me that they think supervision is a part-time job when they can squeeze it in. It's an after work hours kind of thing. No, it's not. It is your job. And so how much of a percentage of time of your workday is spent on supervisory related activities? So, Shauna, to your point, it's like if the employee doesn't know that they're supposed to be doing something, or we find out they're not doing it, well, is it potentially also the manager isn't doing their job? I mean, there's a piece here of everybody needs to be on the same page, the goals, right? And when you've got a new person, are we expecting that they know stuff? We're assuming they already know. We assume they got training from someone else, that someone else took care of that. Well, how does a manager or supervisor know with utmost certainty that that employee knows what to do, when to do it, where to do it, maybe how to do it? Because there's lots of hows. But if it's a safety issue or something, how? Well, if they didn't actually do the training and the onboarding and the walkthrough on whatever, then the answer is they don't know for sure, for sure, for sure. Right? So I know I'm talking to a bunch of kind of like experts in the room, but this is where the hangups kind of come in. And this is also like when you're doing the interviewing or when you're even going through the job description before you're getting to the hiring process, is this an updated job description? What is it the manager, hiring manager needs? What are we maybe screening for in the first place? They've got to help us with that, right? And so if you got a lot of entry level jobs, a lot of different departments, well, maybe someone is interested in this job, but when we're interviewing, not seeing quite the connection. Can there be other opportunities, right? And and sometimes I think we can get locked into things. Any one of us can get locked into something, and the answer is maybe you might be might more in alignment over here. This might be a better skill set. They didn't even know these kinds of jobs existed, right? And growth doesn't have to be up, right? To Jennifer's point, there's lots of lateral opportunities that could be a something too, if that made sense. And especially now with more people asking for time off or needing time away, PLO coverage, kinds of, we don't necessarily need to always hire more people if we can cross train some folks and get more skills. And the more skills they have, the more valuable they are to us as an employee, right? So when we think about any of these emerging kinds of trends, you know, is it is it us? Is it the applicant? When I say us, managers, supervisors, HR, the organization, is there things that we could be doing, tweaking ever so slightly to making a big bold move? Is it something that we need to prime the interviewing process or the onboarding process, the the whole that whole process for the applicant, for the new employee, let alone, so let me ask, do you guys provide formal, I mean, Courtney kind of alluded to this. Do you, as an organization, provide your managers and supervisors, if they're involved in the hiring, have they been given formal hiring, interviewing, training? Yes or no? I'm seeing some yeses pop up. Okay. So, and if yes, and then there's one kind of, and what does kind of mean? I mean, what portions or how much time, right? So when we say yes, truly like how much time, and if we say yes, how long ago? And are there any refreshers? Okay. And so is the training really about what you can and cannot ask, which is important. Don't get me wrong at all. And because I have plenty of people who do the formal interview and then they're like, well, and then we asked the applicant to spend time with the team. We went through, first level, second level interview or something like that. And then we said, why don't you spend time with the department and kind of hang out? Well, they're thinking it's very like a social interview, but it's very casual. It's like, please make no mistake about it. If they're talking to them and asking any questions, that still counts. And they cannot ask anything that's going to fall on that what don't ask. So we've lowered this isn't just managers and supervisors. Now it's employees. Have they got training? They need to know too, because otherwise they potentially could set us up for a challenge that we don't need. And they were just asking about them as a person. The applicant just shared information we don't want to know because we wouldn't be using that to make a hiring decision, right? And how often do you hire? I mean, what kind of frequency do you have? Is it like we hire maybe one or two people a year? Or do you have things going on every month? And here's the reason why I ask. And I can see that some of you are telling me in the chat, you know, sometimes it's like one person who does the bulk of the hiring kinds of things, or we do our training inside a class, a leadership lesson or program that we have. Okay. Um, you got one person who's doing all kinds of stuff, and if they leave, we are in trouble, right? Uh-huh. So guess what? You gotta start planning for that now, right? Well, here's one of the thought processes that I have. If you don't do a lot of hiring or someone isn't involved in a lot of interviewing and there's big gaps of time, you might want to have just like a little micro learning that reminds them like no discrimination and please keep your biases in check and here's that friendly list of what not to ask. I mean, it's been 9 months since you've asked any of these questions, been through this process. Do they do they remember or do we just hope? We assume they're going to bring out all those things from class? Do we think they're reviewing any of that beforehand? Do we as HR give them, I get lots of this in any of the programming that I do for anybody. HR gives me questions I'm supposed to ask. Okay. How old are those questions? How many years have you been using them? Have you reviewed them recently, or do you just send an email with an attachment to the hiring manager? I want to take a look at them. Are they still good questions? Do you have questions that line up with your core values? If we say that's an important thing, shouldn't we be asking at least one of them? I mean, we can ask the applicant, which one of our 5 core values do you most align with? And when they get that deer in the headlights, they haven't done their homework and don't even know what our core values are. Now, maybe that's one of the questions you want to let them know in advance, because then you do expect them to do homework and go to your website and know that you have 5 core values. Or maybe that's a little bit of the stress test because the answer is you expect them to do homework. You expect them to figure out something about the organization. And maybe that is for all positions, kind of this level and up. right? Maybe if they're out in the field or they're out on the warehouse floor, maybe you aren't asking them that. Or maybe you are because that's part of our culture and every single employee. Maybe when you schedule the interview, you tell them this is kind of our culture and our core values are extremely important and we live by them. And we look forward to interviewing you. And I encourage you to pay attention to our website before you come in. You can lead a horse to water. So you might just think about what does that look like? So maybe a little micro learning, right? A refresher on review that job description. Make sure you keep your biases in check. No discrimination. Don't ask these questions to make sure we have as solid interview as we can. Just a little something, something to set the stage. And keep in mind, that way you also have a consistent practice of what you do, and that's also defensible on your side, right? Because there there's the hiring manager's reality. They they got a they got a moving life, right? They got stuff going on. They are most of what I get when I talk to people is like, do I really have to do this? It takes up so much time. And I'm like, don't you like meeting new people? Uh, no, not really. Sometimes, and sometimes absolutely they love it, right? So, how many of your managers, supervisors, um, were promoted from within? Were they promoted from within because they were technically competent? They were awesome at what they did? All right, I've seen things go in the chat. So, first and foremost, little sidebar, nothing wrong with that at all. That doesn't necessarily make them a good manager or supervisor. They're technically great, but how are their people skills? I have had plenty of people tell me, I don't like people. I'm not a people. And I'm like, great. And you're in charge of the people, right? So we promote these people and then we put them in charge of them. Then they have to hire them. Then they have to train them. Do they know how to talk about setting expectations, hold people accountable? Do they know how to onboard? Where's the checklist? I mean, at least if I have a checklist, I can say I did it as long as we actually did it, right? As opposed to, oh, we'll count that. We'll get to that later. How many of you have heard, well, I said I was going to get to it. I get to it later. Well, there are 7 days a week, and I do not see the box for later. That day is not on my calendar, right? So, have we asked them where do they struggle the most in the interviewing? Is it the actual interviewing? Is it going through resumes or applications? Is it after the interviewing and kind of looking at notes or a rating sheet and actually selecting them? Is it helping to write the job description or update it or have the conversation with you about what really is needed now? Is it being able to I can handle the technical elements. I know when what's a good answer with the technical. I'm not as good with quote unquote the softer skills, right? I mean, part of a good interview is truly giving the applicant a realistic job purview. What is the job really like around here on a day to day, and will that work for them? In the coaching that I often share with people is give an applicant every opportunity to weigh in and self opt out. So after a phone screen, does the job still sound interesting? After the first interview, based on what you heard, are you still interested in moving forward? After a second interview, does it still sound good? Before I extend the job offer, I really am expecting when I offer that they'll say yes. But I've also given them like 3 opportunities to say, I don't think so. I don't think that's working for me. I don't want to move forward. But we have to ask them. But I also want to ask my managers, what doesn't work for you? What don't you understand? What makes you skittish? So, where else do you think your people are struggling? Or do you like this list or never thought about this before? Or what say you? What do you think, Jenny, Sarah, Stacy, Sydney? What's going on in your workplaces? Yeah, yeah, if the manager is struggling, then the employees might be struggling. That doesn't
Sorry
really
for the
work that
typo
way.
there.
No, that's okay, right? So, I mean, there's a development of people scenario here, but to encourage new hire touch points, which is good. Absolutely. What are those markers, right? Milestones, maybe. And you're right. You're right, Stacy. Some people just they just need to work, right? Current job market. Um, and and I think one of the things that and without sounding too, there's a whole lot of words I can put in there. I've been around the block just once or twice. This is not new when we find ourselves with um, a lot of people who just need to work, and sometimes we just need. Some people will say, "I just need a warm body." No, you don't. No, you don't. A warm body is worse most of the time than waiting for the right person, seeking out someone because the wrong person gets injured on the job. The wrong person has the wrong mentality and approach to work and can poison the entire workforce. And it only takes one person. The wrong person um, can set you up and set you up for a lawsuit, can do things to harm others in a variety of ways. You really do want to work at um, getting the very best person that you can. And I can appreciate that sometimes our choices are limited. Um, Being a consulting house, we have heard more stories than I care to know about. And in all sincerity, a most recent one is somebody who did not do reference. It wasn't so much about the reference checking, although that didn't happen either, but it was doing a DMV check. And they hired somebody, and that person it could not be on the road driving, had a suspended license, but did not disclose that, and it was not checked. And that person was driving a certain population of individuals on behalf of the organization and should never have been on the road and has been employed for years and has continued to have a situation occur over and over again and continues to be on the road driving. And it all came to a head. And just because of the newness of all of it, I will just kind of stop there. That we need to go through our entire process. We need to we need to manage our risk. And sometimes we don't just want to hire a body. It's not going to help us. So being able to pull together as a team and how do we handle the period without a body, two bodies, to make sure that we're getting somebody who knows somebody who can assist, who's got the right approach. Who can we bring in who's got the right mentality, attitude, approach to work, but maybe doesn't have all the skills that we can teach? There's so much we can teach people. We can't teach them the customer service. My husband just shared with me that he went to an Ace Hardware store. We live in the Salem Kaiser area. And my husband has shopped at one of the big box stores. He went and bought something from this Ace Hardware store on uh what street is that? Commercial Street? Commercial Street? That's not Commercial Street. And the guy offered to help, walked him to the back area, helped him pick out what he needed, walked the product to the register, registered the manufacturing warranty for him because he was in the system, and shook his hand after the purchase and said, "Please come back and see us. So glad you came in." Never gets any of that from the big box store. And what he told me this morning as we were getting ready for work was that he is going to sell the lawnmower, the edger, the blower, and he wants to move to a different kind of scenario, no more gas, anything. And I'm going to go back and purchase my new purchases from them. And I said, absolutely understood. Customer service, right? The right approach about stuff. If you got the right approach, you can teach the technical stuff for a lot of our positions, not every position. I understand. We've got people who have large amounts of education, degrees and certifications to verify the training and whatnot. But think about what we can train, and that our managers and supervisors have to be a bigger piece of on-the-job training. Because when we think about, the kinds of mistakes and that we can avoid, are we trying to find the best person? Or are we just trying to avoid making a bad hire? Because I think there's a difference. You guys tell me. Is this a conversation that you're having? Is this somewhere in the mix? Is that a thought process? I got one exactly from Ruben. Okay? Because I think sometimes the fear says, what is the fear? If what can we name the fear why we would not want this person versus another person? What is it what does it mean to be a safe candidate based on the people who are coming in? I don't know what that would mean in your scenario. Someone who's, a manager says, well, they're not like me. That's a good thing in my book, but that's me. So what is it that they're avoiding? So if we think fear is influencing a decision, can you get that information out of your hiring manager? When they say, I'd like to go with this person, do we ask them why? Why not the other person? What's getting overlooked? What's not getting discussed, right? Is there a bias that could be playing out? And maybe if we're honest, does safe hit us? Are we doing that? Does safe equal success? I mean, maybe a candidate that's pursued for months, uh, then we reject an overly qualified applicant. So for one of you, it's getting the position filled so they don't need to do work as they are truly overworked currently, right? So we're trying to get somebody in there because we know everybody's overwhelmed, overworked. And is it the right combination? Is it the right skill set? Is it the right person? reposting, don't want to repost the position and going back and starting all over again, right? So then we go for the person. And what we need to do is we need to look then and say, how long did they end up staying? Did they become any performance challenges or concerns, behavior challenges or concerns? Because sometimes don't you just have that niggle, that niggle maybe in the pit of your stomach or the back of your brain, and you're just like, no, I just don't think this is going to be the right person. That hap that has happened to me more than once, but one in particular, I was like, nope, 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 nope. And the staff, the consulting staff at that time said, Deborah, yes, we're all in on this person. We want this person. Do you know how beneficial it will be to have someone who is experienced in this way? And I'm like, no, she does not have it. She is not hungry. She's not interested. She doesn't have the energy for the position. There is no way. No. And they're like, we want her. So against my better judgment, I was like, well, she serves all of us. She works with all of us. You will all be depending on her, myself included. But I was the one who had to supervise her. She didn't even last 2 weeks, people. Not even 2 weeks. And I was like, I told you. I told you. So, um, I like what you're putting in here. The applicants seem too excited and driven to succeed. Will they get bored? Well, then see, this is it. Stacy, perfect statement, right? Then this is what's going on in your head. Then ask them. Ask them a question that kind of gets at that, right? And so then ask the question, if you don't get the final say on something, then ask the question about what's the hesitation, the something, so that at least if nothing else, you've kind of put it out there. Now, I will say that I'm very competitive with myself. And I don't have to say I told you so to be right, but I also am trying to educate people. So if I put that out there and say, what about this or this? If these things were to happen, how would you respond? Or how might you address these things? Or how might that impact the team? And let the manager sit with that. And if they still make their decision, then hopefully that will come back and say, when they come to you and say, it's not working out or something. So talk to me about how this is impacting the team, or how have you talked about this or something, because come back to that, because hopefully this will be a learning for a future hire, right? You try to provide guidance. You ask them to think about these things, to consider these things. So now it's the next hire and we want to look at them, right? I think we need to pay attention to those things because, to your point, and yes, if anybody is a clock watcher, I hear you, I see you, is about that job description. Did a hiring manager really describe the real job? Did they update things? Were you screening for and looking for things? Because sometimes I get managers and supervisors that I've worked with, and the answer is, it's fine, it's fine. And the answer is no, it isn't. It isn't updated. It's not what they're really looking for. It's not current in terms of what's really taking place with that job or some of even the equipment or whatnot, right? So when we hire somebody new, do we, as part of our onboarding process, have like a 30-day check-in? Are the managers even doing this to, like, tell me how the job is like you thought it would be? What was a surprise? What did we overlook or miss in the onboarding process that would have made it easier or a, a better transition for you? Because there's a piece, I think, here of we can learn from our onboarding stuff. Anybody who's new, like in the last quarter, last month, getting feedback, right? What is it really like to work here? If we brought you into our next onboarding of new applicants, new employees, and we asked you as a newer employee to tell them what it was really like to work here, what would you say to them? Let's find out. Are we doing a good job? Are we living our core values? From an HR standpoint, are we doing good stuff? From a manager in a department, are we doing good stuff? Is it lining up, right? What's missing that we aren't covering? Where are we setting an employee up for something, right? So this can be HR's way of helping the hiring manager like peel back something where we have an oops potentially, or maybe it's a bigger something. You guys already identified some of your challenges, right? So for just the last moment here, where do we need to lean in, right? But please make sure that you give yourself credit for the things that we're doing really well, right? And in all seriousness, where is there a place for us to improve, right? If we just come and we visit and we chat and whatnot, okay. But what do we need to improve on? Is there something where we can, do we need to provide a little bit more training? Do we need to spend a little bit more time with our managers? Is there something where like we really do need a better onboarding kind of process? Some of you said, yeah, I get information from my hiring manager. I meet with them. Or I I try, but they push back. And it's like, this is non-negotiable. This is a partnership. We're in this together. I can't get you good people to look at, to talk to interview, unless you meet with me and spend some time and look at that job description. It doesn't update itself, right? And a good time to update a job description is like annual performance review with a person sitting in it. Is this current, right? Tell me what's working, what's not working. Is this still true? Are you still doing all these things? Because then when they leave, we have something going on there. So we can kind of attack it from both sides of that equation, right? Again, think about candidate experience, employee experience. And is it everything it's cracked up to be? And you don't have to do like an employee opinion survey, but you could do a one question pulse survey once a quarter to see how people are doing, or just your new employees for the first year. So if you can improve one thing about your hiring process in your organizations tomorrow, what would it be? Right? And it's not that I don't know you guys have lots going on in your world. Maybe there's somebody in your department or somebody within those 14 branches that would like to take the helm and start working on something and bring others in. Just kind of start the process. Sometimes just one small thing at a time. Well, and then Lisa, pop in, sit in, say, I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to sit in on one and see how they do. See what, don't say anything. You're just going to sit in. I'm just an observer.
So I guess I should have said I wish I was more available to be in the
Oh,
interviews.
because your
Time is
time,
time.
time. Yeah, yeah. Well, and part of it is can you see when they're having them, right? And
Yes,
schedule, and how
yes.
far in advance are they scheduling them, to see whether or not, can you sit in? Are they any virtual? Are they video? Can I eavesdrop? I just, what part of that can you do, right? Because sometimes the answer is maybe we have some challenges and we don't know. I mean, my son was interviewing for months and months and months, and no one ever communicated anything to him. Nothing, zero, nada. And it's like, is he a bad interviewee? I mean, does he give really bad answers? How would we know? No one told him anything. And I was like, you could always ask a question. And it's like, will anybody tell him anything? But it's part of it's like, or are people just really crappy interviewers? I know they're crappy follow-uppers, but are they? Right? And so is it us? Is it them? Is it the collective? Is it were they like too short? I mean, some of his interviews were like 15 minutes long, and I'm like, that was not an interview. That was a brief screening element. That's not an interview, right? Because what questions? And they were like yes, no things. And it's like, okay, no, that I'm sorry, that's not an interview. They're not trying to find out anything about you. They're trying to confirm information. Okay, that's a great screening tool. And next. So what is it we're really doing? But that gets back to Do you enjoy doing this? Do you want to do this? Are you looking to find out about people? Are you trying to find someone in alignment with the department and the body of work? The body of work. Or are you just trying to go through the motion because HR said you got to do this and you're checking a box? Big difference, right? So I like the fact that be more present, real job descriptions, onboarding, right? Longer training experience. So think about what you can do. Share some of these questions internally. So for those of you who are still with me, one of the things is some of this stuff is not just quote for you. Take this back, use it. Feel free to use it as questions that you would probe to your team, to your managers, and see what kind of answers they would give you. Are you guys even on the same page? That might give you some direction. And some of you are gonna be putting together stuff for 2027, budget, scheduling, timing. Maybe this is something to put into the mix as part of your plan for 2027 with these folks, right? So, what I know for sure is how do we avoid bad hires? Because we increase great hires, right? Look at what we're doing. Look at what we're doing. So, always, as always, I end with start working on something, anything you need to share with somebody else, do all that. And I'll stick around for any questions, but I will tell you that here's what's coming up for those of you who like to kind of know. I don't have for sure in uh, August, we're going to talk about psychological safety. So, and that's one of mine. I'll also tell you that there's an organization that we work with called Perform Yard, and they are going to do a special lunch and learn with us, and it's free. Anybody's invited. I'll send out invites, and it really is about performance reviews and using AI to assist. And so they really have a philosophy um, of using programming to assist your managers and supervisors to make that process easier, more engaging, but good data and information. And as someone who's had a demo with them, two of them, in fact, already, I really like some of what they do. HR Answers does. So just know that that's a special something something. And if you have an interest, great, join us. If not, no big deal. But I will have uh, OSHA's going to come and spend some time with us. And you don't have to be black boxes and be mysterious, but he's going to come and dispel myths about what's going on with OSHA and some of the new regulations that have come over the last couple of years, some for specific industries. But you can ask any question you want of OSHA, and he will be here. So that's Greg. And then Brandon Byers, he did some information for at the PERHERMA conference, the strategic management conference recently, and he talked about introverts and extroverts, and he talked about personality styles and into management and all kinds of things. So he's going to come and join us for a conversation. He's pretty excited about it. We have not settled on a date for either one of these guys, but they're going to be in the fall. So, of course, as soon as I have that nailed down with both of them, then I will let you guys know. But both of them I've talked with, we've agreed. We just have to find which date they just haven't picked which date they want to come. So those are coming up. So that's what I know so far there. So thanks for being part of this one. Thanks for weighing in. And as someone said, one of the things that I like about HR Lunch Bunch is it gives them something to think about. And I always hope that that's true, that we learn a little something, but that it makes you think. I hope not too much or too hard. I don't want to make it too difficult by any means, but definitely, again, good, Courtney. Great ideas. That's always a plus. So I'll be the last one out of the room if we want to hang out, ask more questions, or chit chat a little bit. But I'm so glad you were part of this one. It's always a plus. And otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful 4th of July. Make it a safe one. All right. And then hopefully I'll see you in August as well. So everybody take care. All right. Thanks, people. And I will stop the recording.